aren't there. Like, let me show you. This is a blade I've tested. This is like a kind of a bolo style machete. I love this one. This is also made by Cobra Steel. And this one, I've also engraved a bunch of the word on here. It's like, got a bunch of the scripture on there because it's super fun. I had it engraved.
Oh, that's cool.
Just went crazy with it. But, it says fight the good fight on here. And it says, proclaim the word, be urgent in season and out of season, convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teaching. The master shall rescue me from every wicked work and save me for his heavenly reign. Guard the commandments of Yahuwah your Elohim, to walk in his ways and revere him. These are like critical life verses I never want to forget. Like, this is the stuff that I need on my weapon. But on this, which I have used like crazy now for, I don't know, maybe 4.5 months, I trust this machete. Like, I trust this as a tool. I wear it all the time. I've modified the sheath with all these copper rivets because they were junk, the ones that came with it. Like, I start to customize it when I like it. It's like it passed the test. I have tested this thing. I can literally put it in my hand, close my eyes, and swing it confidently in a room and know exactly where it is. Like, that's an important component to my life. This has a bunch of those rolled edges on the front working end of this, because when I'm chopping into stuff, sometimes there's metal in there, sometimes there's just knots in there, and I can see where the edges rolled, but nowhere has it chipped like in that other blade. This one's tempering. What this tells me is the tempering process where they hardened it and softened it wasn't as good as this one. So this is a differences in steel and the literal molecular structure of the crystals of the steel. Now there's another one, this one, which is beautiful, and it's made of Damascus, right? It's like layered steel. So there's soft steels and harder steels, higher carbon content, lower carbon content. This is like what you would be more like a gladius, or in the scriptures when it says the word of Elohim is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword. This is that word they're using there is Machaira. That's literally looks like this. If you go and look up a Machaira, this is what you'll see. Like, this is the sword of the spirit, right? This is like what's more like called a Xiphos, which is a short sword. This, when I went out to test this and began cutting branches off of trees, okay? As soon as I tested it, now I'll see if you can find this. As soon as I tested it, if you can see, there's bent.
There's a bend.
It's bent, right?
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily terrible because you can bend it back. It just tells me that it's too soft for what it is that I'm wanting it to do, that it's not returned back to true again. And so in order for me to get this edge back to where it needs to be, now the edge, this is the factory edge. This is not me sharpening it. Sometimes I start with a tool like that just so I can go and experiment with it to see if it's worth my time. Because if I'm going to sharpen this, I'm going to invest hours of my life into it. Hours. Like, to get to where my edge on this one, this single edge, this one took me about 1 hour and 20 minutes to get this one at that level. Like that, just that one side of that. Wow. That took me a long time. And this is with a special custom precision knife sharpening grinder system that MT Knives sells on his website. It's called like the perfect sharpening system, whatever. Anyways, it's awesome. But that took me a long time. And so if I chip this, I'm going to be pissed. Like, that's going to suck. And this is what a lot of us look like, is that we are not tempered properly. And so when we go out into the battlefield and we go out and try to engage in warfare and we try to go in and actually engage the enemy in combat, like, we bend under the pressure because we're not hardened properly. We have not been tempered. And like, this is why he said the word of Elohim is tried, like tested. He says it's like silver refined 7 times over. That's all. Yeah. That's like your word, your promises to us. He's not saying that because he's being poetic. He's saying that because people would have understood what pure silver looked like. There's lots of different versions of it, but there's purity. When you see shining, shimmering silver, you know it. And this is what we literally says in Ezekiel 16. He talks about go and get a sword and sharpen it till it's glistening, till it's like hairs popping sharp. And he's like, and I want you to shave your head with it. Like, in order to get your sword, this sword I could shave with. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of training. And for it to hold that edge in a battle, that's a whole other thing entirely. And that's what he's trying to make us into. He is trying to refine us. He's trying to hone us and temper us. When I was in that shop making a knife with Patrick, like, we took the steel that had not been tempered. It was called CTS XHP, which is like a carpenter tool steel. And we took it and put it into a kiln. After we'd ground it into the basic profile and shape, then we took it and put it into a kiln. And then we heated it up, and it was like 1473 degrees. And it was for like 43 minutes. And then we took it out and we air quenched it between 2 plates of aluminum and then injected cold air onto it. to bring it down to an exact temperature really quickly, and then we put it back in the oven for a different period of time at a different temperature. And this was a tempering process. And so we're hardening it to try to make the crystals hard, but then we're tempering it to try to make it a little bit soft so that it's got some flex and doesn't chip. All of this is critically important, and this is why there's a difference between a $250 knife a lot of times and a $15 knife. And this is why he's trying to hone you and refine you into these different things. And just because somebody came along early in your life and blunted you and crushed you and bent you out of shape, you know what? The Father is a good blacksmith. And we have this word in the scriptures where people quote this and say, like iron sharpens iron, so when one man sharpens the countenance of the face of his friend. But that is a mistranslation, and I'm absolutely certain of it, because the word there, Brazil, also has its root meaning to forge. It's not just as iron sharpens iron. I didn't use any iron to sharpen a single one of these, not once. I used corundum. I literally use sapphires. I literally use stones. I use stones to sharpen these. But when I go to a blacksmith shop and I forge out a knife and I change the shape of it, I heat it up and I beat on it with iron. I smash it and change it completely. That is what we're doing when we're having relational conversations like this. We are changing forever the countenance of our friend. We're being reforged into a different tool. And he literally says at the end of our life, like, we are called to use a sword until the day that we die. And this beautiful gift in the kingdom is we are going to take our swords and we're going to go before the master blacksmith, and we are going to reform them into tools for an agrarian lifestyle, towards sustenance and provision and peace. And that is a good day. And you know what? Until then, we use them. And we be careful to keep that edge sharp. And the way that we do that is to hone it in the water of the word, literally go back to the water of the word on a regular basis.